Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka blenderhd, blenderhd. You can follow me there on Twitter. And this is the show. This is the show where we go over yesterday's slate. We take a look and review some top players' lineups in the large field GPPs. And then we kind of take a look at today's slate, which I don't know what we're going to do today. I don't know what we're going to do today. It's an 11-game slate. So that means there's 22 teams to pull shenanigans. And it's the trade deadline, right? Today is the trade deadline, and who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, right? Because then whoever's getting traded, it can't play tonight. Is the trade deadline like at 3 o'clock? Are we going to get at least what the trades are by then? Who knows what's going on? It's silly season in the NBA. So whatever we talk about today, about today's slate, I don't even know if it matters. I don't know at 11 in the morning. I don't even know if it matters. And that's why we primarily cover strategy on the show. It's teaching time. So if you got the questions, I got the answers. Right? If you're in the YouTube chat right now, I see you guys. Gerald Miller, Max Coach, Apocalypse, Daniel Hutchings, Andrew Palmer, Matt Mears, Chandler Cannon, Card Fan, Jacob Calloway, Cheryl in Ridgeway, Dreward 27. I see you guys. Give me those thummy thumbs. Keep the apple juice cold. Or if you want to listen later, you could always subscribe on the podcast feed. RotoGrinders pregame show. Search on iTunes. Rate and review it there. Yesterday, there weren't really shenanigans yesterday, other than waiting to see whether or not Harden was going to play, and he did play. So really, the only thing, what was the only thing yesterday? Lonzo was out. Was that the only late news? Because we still had the Lakers, obviously without LeBron. Then we had the Knicks, right? Peyton played. Okay, so that didn't make that much of a difference. But really, really slotting in Nickeil Alexander-Walker into the starting lineup. He was a lot of people got there. He came in before lock, about maybe 20 minutes before lock, but still 40% owned in the pull-up jumper on DraftKings. Heavy chalk. Did he get there? Yeah, I guess he got there. 32.75 for what? He was like 4,400. So that was pretty good, right? But I mean, Harden was mega owned. 38%. Bruce Brown, who didn't even play the fourth quarter, he was the big dud of the slate. Although at 51% ownership, I still think he appeared in most of the top lineups anyway. When we take a look at, the winning lineup had Bruce Brown in it. 16.5 points. But I mean, if you get Cantor at Cantor's 9x, Covington, you're right. If you get Al-Farouq Aminu, that he pretty much needed him. He went nuts. He went up for, 11x or so. PJ Dozier. I mean, look at this. Right, you could use Bruce Brown. 51% Bruce Brown only getting 16 points in a lineup like this. Even the second place lineup. See, second place lineup, no Bruce Brown. But still, Derek Jones didn't do, he did enough, I guess, over here. But you got to have Aminu. Didn't have Cantor. So basically here, but had Fournier, who did well. At 12% owned. The whistles go woo over here. Pretty much the same. We had Devontae Kaycock. Should I put explicit tags on this? The Kaycock? He started for the Lakers. But he barely played. He was going to play like what they were doing with Damian Jones. 10.5 points. I think you got lucky there, even to get 10.5 points. You got a little blowout run or something towards the end. He was 3% owned. I think that's all he should have been owned. Oh, he's starting. Yeah, he's going to play like 8 minutes. 10 minutes, maybe? They could play small with Morris, and they could have Harrell there. So, it's kind of like the false starting center type of role. But I guess people went there. Tinky Tyler up here. So you don't see, yeah, I guess you don't see. In the winning lineup, there was Bruce Brown. Here's another Bruce Brown lineup. Walker, Brown, Harden. Petty theft over here. Had Cantor. Ayton went off. He actually played 34 minutes. He hasn't been playing that much. So he got 48 points. I mean, if he's going to play 34 minutes, obviously 5,900 is way too cheap. But he hasn't. He's been playing like 24 minutes. Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma. There are a lot of ways to get there. Kelly Oubre. Like, you didn't need Jokic. Jokic was the top scorer on the slate, and you didn't even need him. As long as you got there. So, I mean, did anyone? What was Jokic's ownership here? 13%. So, decent amount. Petty theft didn't have any, but I mean, there was a little out there. The main thing to me on the slate, the two chalk pieces that you had to make decisions on, I think more than Bruce Brown, was Jordan Poole and Nicholas Claxton. I think Claxton was over-owned. I mean, he got there. Yes, he got there. 28.75 points. Jordan Poole didn't get there at his price because they bumped him up. But 5,600, 26, ain't going to cut it. So we see, like, Jay Blake the King, Petty Theft, Hishbu, even Tyrannosaurus Rex, like, day constructions without Poole. And same thing for Claxton. Other than Mr. Good Seats, most of these players were under on Claxton. Over on Harrell, he didn't get there. I mean, he didn't play in the blowout. So we could see these constructions. Because Paul Millsap, he was under 4K. He did well in like the first quarter and then just died. Just nothing. But I understand that. I understood the Millsap pivot. He was still 17% owned. It's not like he was that low owned. People play Derek Jones. I'm assuming Derek Jones is a late swap. I'm assuming people prepared some lineups maybe for Harden not to play or for Harden to play, and they switched around there. I could see that. I wouldn't go out of my way to play Derek Jones Jr. And I guess that's where maybe that's where the Cantor ownership comes also. People prep their lineups late in case Harden sat. Because if Harden sat, that just opened up the door for like Tyler Johnson and Joe Harris, and like everyone's too cheap on the Nets, like to the ridiculous end. So I can understand if a lot of top players in GPPs like punted their lineups to late for the 10 o'clock games. What's the worst case scenario? If you had Harden in, you have way too much money and you're probably playing Lillard. But if you don't play Harden and you're just like, I'm going to keep my cheap pieces, I'm going to keep my Bruce Browns and all of that, and then still leave money on the table just so you have something to play with, I could see it. And that's why you need someone like Cantor. That's why you need someone like, even CJ McCollum. I mean, was he owned? Not much, really. You had to spend the money somewhere. So I get it. Or even like Hishbu had 50% Tyler Johnson, even with Harden playing. Wiggins, horrible game. Randall did great. It's just that the Knicks the National Blowout Association. Like, Randall could have gotten 65 points if he played the fourth quarter. Aaron Gordon did good in the beginning and then died and then did a little bit better and then died again. Is he getting traded? What's going on today? It's Magic playing. Everyone's getting traded today. Is Lowry getting traded? Who's getting traded today? Who do we have to worry about? Giannis is questionable. Giannis is questionable. It's like it seems like no one's on the injury report yet. It doesn't matter. Brogdon is questionable. Kevin Porter is questionable. Gallinari, Ross, Miles Turner. Right, the Pacers guys. Right, Blake Griffin. Who cares? Going through what? Cody Zeller. Does that matter? Rudy Gay. I don't care. Wayne Ellington, Jordan McLaughlin, Garrett Temple. Okay, it's not many. The injury report doesn't matter today. Who's being traded? Who's getting traded today? That's what's going to matter, because they're going to announce a trade and be like, whoever's on those teams, they get a boost because those guys aren't going to be playing tonight. People going to get traded mid-game. Can that happen? We're going to get one of those types of things, a DNP. Oh, this guy's not in the starting lineup. Oh, because he's traded. Because he's traded. Does that happen? When's the actual deadline? Is it before the games start? Maybe I should look that up before I do the show. Brandon Stinson. So how about Aminu hit with his 1% smash percentage for your yesterday example, Blender? Thought, well, he played, how many minutes did he play? Dude, he was projected for like 18 minutes. He played like 30 plus minutes. So yes, he has a 1% chance of smashing his price when he plays 18 minutes. If you projected him to play over 30 minutes, then yes, his smash percentage goes up. It's all related to the minutes. Look at Boban. You tell me Boban's 4K and he's going to play 38 minutes, I'll jam him into every lineup. But even if how many minutes do you project for Boban on some slate? Oh, Kleber's out or Powell's out or something. You still project what, 12 minutes? I mean, what would that median of his minutes be? Let's say just for whatever sake, he ends up playing 32 minutes. Oh, yeah, well, if he plays 32 minutes at 3,500, his smash percentage is like 97%. I mean, like, it's stupid. So the minutes have to projecting the minutes matters. There are plenty of people with 1% smash percentages. I mean, we take a look here. Go down to whatever. Cameron Payne has a 10% smash at playing 18 minutes. But let's say, the Suns blow out the Magic and he ends up playing 26 minutes. Well, yeah, obviously he has more chance of scoring. We go down here. Derek Favors, 15 minutes, 3%. Smash at 3,400, which is like 20 points. Well, what happens if Gobert gets injured in the first quarter? And Favors has to play a bunch, gets into foul trouble. Then Favors ends up playing 23 minutes. Well, then that's different. His numbers are based on the minutes. Yes, James Harden has a 41% chance of smashing. His projection for 38 minutes. If he ends up playing 33 minutes, well, then obviously that's going to go down. Zubac, 32 minutes. Well, what happens if Zubac plays 26? Well, it's obviously less of a chance. PJ Dozier, 28% smash in 23 minutes. But let's say he only plays 16. Well, then obviously he has less of a chance to smash. It's all related to one another. Drew 27. Did projections kick Hero Lewis's projection up a lot with Alonzo news? Not really. I mean, up, yeah, his minutes went up, but not to that dramatic extent. Understand that Hero Lewis played like 7 minutes before the blowout. Akira Lewis played like the entire fourth quarter. If that game was close, and also Nickeil Alexander-Walker was in foul trouble, right? He got 2 fouls early. And it was a blowout. So, yeah, obviously Kira Lewis is going to play 20-plus minutes as opposed to 8. Daniel Hutchings. Hey, Jordan, I won an entry into the $2,500 1,011-person DK NBA contest today. That's the Mega Millionaire contest. I assume many others won via satellites. Nah, not necessarily. Does that mean I can expect the field to behave more like a smaller entry fee contest? No. That contest is going to be similar to any high stakes, the 888 or whatever. It's more like that. You know how hard it is to win satellites into a contest? Like, if you're playing a $4 contest to win a satellite into a $2,500 entry contest, they didn't run that many of those types of satellites. It's going to be mostly high stakes pros. Mostly. I think what's the max entry on that? I think 13 or something. You're going to see multiple lineups. You're going to see people putting 13 or 10 or 6 or something like that. So no, I would treat that just like the 888 or whatever, the 777, whatever they call it, the $600 box out, man, whatever they call the 3-figure Like the 444, whatever. I don't know. I never know what they call it. They change the names of him all the time. Tonight, only 4 games for GPP on FanDuel. What do you think? How are there only 4 games on FanDuel? There's not 4 games. There's 11 games tonight. Did FanDuel split them up? I don't know. It's going to be the same. Let me take a look. The main slate has everyone. What are we talking about? 4-game slate? No, there's 11 games. I don't know. Are you on the wrong day? Are you from the past? Are you from the future? What are you talking about? 4 games? Tonight only 4 games. No, there's no only 4 games. There's 11 games. Luis Jose Lopez, I'm a RotoGrinders member. Can you talk about your GPP process on FanDuel using the optimizer? We have tons of Roto Academy videos. If you're a premium member, which you could get, click on the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. Go look. I've done. Squirrel Patrol is done. Britt's done. I mean, plenty of people. Go into the tutorial section on the website. The video section, tutorials. There's tons of Roto Academy videos about lineup HQ, all sports, all everything. You can hours upon hours of content. Oh, the deadline is tomorrow. They're telling me the deadline's tomorrow at 3 p.m. Oh, which makes it worse. So the deadline is tomorrow, but then we may have trades today. Is that the point of it? Is that why they made the deadline tomorrow? What's going on? So it's going to be, is it going to be silly tomorrow also? Do you think there's going to be trades? Isn't it they're going to trade today? You'd figure if they're trading a guy tomorrow by 3 o'clock, so maybe we get those silly stuffs today, the DNPs out of nowhere, right? We get at 7:20, and we then realize that that Kyle Lowry isn't in the starting lineup for the Raptors, right? That happens, right? We get to 7:55, and Aaron Gordon is not in the starting lineup for the Magic. We're like, what's going on? Right? Is that what's going to happen today? I'm sick of it. Sick of it. I don't even know if I'm going to play today. 22 teams, trade deadline on top of all the normal shenanigans. End up jumping out the window at some point. Jacob Calloway, question about MLB lineup HQ. Does the product have top stack percentage, or is that something I'll have to calculate with the data provided? We have Slate IQ for MLB. So that article, and it gets updated several times a day. I believe that there is a column in lineup HQ for it, but there's also an article that'll show top stack percentage versus ownership. So you get that in MLB. If you're a RotoGrinders premium member. But yes, I use that. Essentially, I use that hand in hand with the projections. There's a column in lineup HQ, but a lot of times I find it easier to just have it separate. On 2 separate, just 2 tabs, right? You have Slate IQ, you have lineup HQ, you're good, right? So yes, you do get that. Joe Wheeler, I bought your course yesterday. Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old concerning EV and contest selection. Well, I mean, you bought the course. Go listen to it. He says only 4 games viable for GPP. No, what do you mean only 4 games viable for GPP? What are you talking about? There's 11 games viable for GPP. There's a whole of players. I don't understand that. What do you mean there's only 4 games viable for GPP? I'm looking at the projections right now. Like even if I just run the optimal right here, it's all a mix of people. Went to Charlotte, I guess. I think maybe they're maybe a little underpriced. What do you mean? There's no like standard games. How about players? Here's about the games. So you're gonna just eliminate seven games. Who cares? Who cares what happens? Who cares? Detroit, Indiana. If everyone's out for the Pacers, you're not going to play Doug McDermott or whatever because he's not in one of the games. That doesn't make any sense. Brandon Simpson says tonight is the problem because they're going to sit some of the guys that are talked about in negotiations. All the trade will be done by tomorrow's slate, plus there will only there's only 4 games tomorrow. So is that what we're talking about? 4 games tomorrow? We're not even talking about today's slate? Just tomorrow. We're already talking about tomorrow's slate. How should we play tomorrow's slate? There's not even pricing out for tomorrow. But yeah, this is going to be silly season tonight. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to play tonight. Let me just take the night off. Spend time with the wife. The wife. Is it worth the mental anguish? I mean, there's edge, right? It just from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, you're going to just have to stare at your computer screen and wait for updates and late swaps and new starting lineups. And is this guy playing and DNPs and who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Brandon Matlick asked, what exactly is smash percentage? Smash percentage is the percentile in which their projection meets their target GPP score for their salary. So, for instance, in basketball, the baseline for a smash is like 5x plus 10. So let's take Zubac. 5x plus 10 is 35 points. Okay? His distribution is 18.72 to 43.99. His median is 31. So, normal distribution curve. I'll show you this. Okay, so this is what a projection really looks like. Okay? What you see here, or whatever, we're looking at Zubac. See, this 31, 1843, right? 1831, 43, right? 18 is right where this mouse is. 31, 43. This is one standard deviation. That's one standard deviation. Up or down. This is 2 standard deviations. This is 3 standard deviations. All of his outcomes are inside this curve. But you see this green section? That makes up 68.2% of all of the outcomes. Right? Because that's what a projection is. Projection isn't 30, he's going to score 31. No, that's just that's that 50, that's right here. Right here, right at the top. That's the median of all these outcomes. His floor, 1843. So where one standard deviation is. Okay? Now there are other outcomes out. So, if he scores 14 points, that's in here. Scores 45 points, 48 points or whatever, he's over here. So what's his smash? His smash, well, it all depends on the price. So 5x plus 10 would be a baseline. 5x plus 10 is 35. Okay, well, the median is 31. The ceiling is 43. So the median is 31. Ceiling is 43. So where is 35 points on there? Well, about right over here. That's where 35 points would be on his projection, on his curve, normal distribution curve. So if it's right there, it's right at 30. It's right at the 63rd percentile. Right here. 63rd percentile means 37% of the outcomes in his projection are above that. Which means based on 32 minutes and all the variables and everything and running 1,000 simulations, 37% of the outcomes are above his GPP target score. So he's a 37% chance of hitting those. PG Washington, 35. SGA, 33. Right? We go to DraftKings. Harden, 5x plus 10 is about 65 points. Well, his median is like 63. So yeah, so his smash is, how many outcomes are past that, whatever that point is? Well, 41% of them. And we take a look at someone with really low smash percentage. Let's take a look at the 5%. Right. Chris Middleton today. Someone even lower. Josh Jackson. Yeah, our favorite, Josh Jackson. 5x plus 10 is about what? 20, 35 points? 37 points? 37 points? Well, his median is 37. I mean, his ceiling is 32. Median is 24. Right? 24. Right? We have, where are we? Josh Jackson. Where do we go? Am I looking at FanDuel? Where am I looking? Where did he go? Okay, there he goes. So we have 24, 32. 24, 32. Well, he needs to score like 30, what? Well, 38 or something, 37 to smash. It's going to be somewhere over here. Nearly outside of 2 standard deviations. Almost. Which is represented by 2%. Anyone that's listed with 0%, Jamino automatically that's outside of 2 standard deviations. So there technically are, just it's going to be under 1%. It's going to be 0.2%, right? Jamino typically, these red areas over here, he typically cuts off as outliers, parts of the projection that happen so infrequently. Right? Because 68.2% is in the green, 95.4% is in the green and yellow, 99.7% is in the green, yellow, and red. Then 0.3% is in like something like completely nutso type of outcomes. Assuming they get the minutes, right? Assuming that they play the minutes, like an outcome where they get that they don't play at all, 0 minutes. Yeah, obviously it's going to be 0. It's obviously going to be 0. This is in the minutes provided. But that's what a projection is. Of course, I've explained this before. I explained it in the course. This is what you're looking at. You're not looking at 30. Oh, we predict him to score 31 points. No, 31 is just the median outcome of a whole range of outcomes. It's more likely that he's going to score somewhere within this green section. But understand that green section covers 18 to 44 points. So this green section right here, you go, oh, as long as I'm in the green, I'm fine. Well, if you're in the green, like if he scores 19 points, it's in the green. If he scores 42 points, he's in the green. What's the spread on that? 42 minus 18. 24-point spread is within 1 standard deviation. Is in that green section. So if you play Zubac on FanDuel tonight or whatever, I'm just using him as an example, and he's projected, median is 31, and he only scores 24. Oh, I can't believe, like, there's nothing that can't believe. Like, don't up in arms? No, it's inside here. That's well within 1 standard deviation. That's normal. That's expected. Anywhere in between 18 and 44 would be in here. So you see how much variance there is, even in NBA. SGA's projection on FanDuel isn't 40. We predict him for 40 points. No, it's not a prediction. Based on simulating his range of outcomes on 34 points with the given variables of the game, matchups, everything, efficiency, who's in, who's out, all the basketball stuff. His projection within 1 standard deviation is about 26 to 53. So if he scores anywhere between 26 and 53, That's well within the margin of error. And I know you're thinking, well, 26 to 53 is a pretty wide range. So 28 and 52 are like, yes. Now you're getting it. Now you're getting what projection. Now you're getting what variance is. You're getting what it is. So if the range of two players, let's say let's go to DraftKings. Now that you know, if you didn't, that anywhere in this green is considered like normal. That's like expected within one standard deviation, within the margin of error. So if we take two players, let's say at the same salary that are projected similarly, okay? Let's see if we could find two guys. Kawhi, okay, here we go. Kawhi, the different positions, but who cares? Kawhi Leonard and De'Aaron Fox. We could even throw it, they're both 9K, okay. 45.91 median. De'Aaron Fox, 45.45 median. Not much, a half a point difference. We could see here that De'Aaron Fox actually has a slightly higher ceiling, slightly, by a point and a half, but Kawhi has a nearly 6-point higher floor. So if you had to choose between the two in cash games, Kawhi would probably be a better choice. His range is narrower, okay? They both have the same median, nearly the same median. But you can see here that De'Aaron Fox's range is like 31 points, and Kawhi's is like 25 points, 24 points. Narrower range. So that this distribution curve is narrower for Kawhi. There are more 34-point outcomes in this green space. De'Aaron Fox has 28-point outcomes here. Kawhi's 28-point outcomes are in the yellow. So for like cash games or something like that, if you had to choose between the two, that was the only thing I gave you, you'd probably choose Kawhi Leonard. But let's say in GPP, I mean, look at the difference in the ranges. Yeah, the medians are close, half a point. One has a range of 24 points, one has a range of 30 points. So if Kawhi Leonard puts up 36 and De'Aaron Fox puts up 57, that's considered normal. I know it sounds oh, that's a dramatic difference. No, that would be normal. That would both be within one standard deviation of their median projection. So if Kawhi puts up 36 and De'Aaron Fox puts up 56, a 20-point difference, projection-wise, it's within the margin of error. 20 points. So now if I tell you that, even though they're extremely close median-wise, and their variance, I mean, we're talking about two guys that are the closest. I mean, once we get away, we get even wider ranges. That a 20-point range would be normal. Like that would be well within the margin of error. Like it's something you wouldn't even compensate for whatsoever. If I told you that Kawhi was going to be 20% owned and De'Aaron Fox was going to be 10% owned, who do you play? Well, you play De'Aaron Fox every single time. Why should the ownership be any different? And if you did that, and Kawhi puts up 56 and De'Aaron Fox puts up 36, I picked the wrong one. No, they're both within their one standard deviation outcome. That's normal. That would be normal. So if Fox puts up 36 points, he was projected for 45 points. The projections are off. No, the projections are fine. In fact, the projections were great. Yeah, but you projected him for 45 and he only scored 36. So we didn't project him for 45. 45 is his median. That doesn't mean he's going to score 45 points. It just means that 45 points is there. That's it. That's all that means. That's literally all that means. Having an outcome of 35 points and it's over here, well, that's still in this green. That's still, we're projecting. Projections are projecting this green area. Well, they're projecting the whole thing, but I mean, you're looking, when you look at floor, ceiling, median, you're just looking at this green area. What's going to happen tonight? Well, it's to be probably 68.2% of the time, it'll be something in the green. That's it. What constitutes that green area? Well, for De'Aaron Fox, it's 28 to 60 points. 28 to 60 points with a median of 45. That's it. So knowing that, knowing how projections are, that's what a projection is. What's the difference between De'Aaron Fox and Donovan Mitchell? Oh, there's a 1-point difference. Oh, that means De'Aaron Fox has to be a much better play. Look, it's a full 1-point difference. Take a look at their ranges. 28 to 59, 30 to 50. Like, it's practically the same. A 1-point difference. But, I mean, remember, look at these ranges. Donovan Mitchell could score 33 points, and De'Aaron Fox could score 57 points, and that would be normal. That would be like, oh, well, what happened? You wouldn't think. There's no reason to ask what happened there. That's in there. That's well within one standard deviation of their range of outcomes. So with that disparity, with that range being so wide, this is what I mean by play whoever you want. I mean, what's the difference between Fox and Mitchell? Not much. Trae Young actually projects for a little higher, right? He's at 47 median for 8,700. And that's why his smash percentage is a little bit higher. 32% versus 23%. But still, look at Trae Young's range, 27 to nearly 65. So it's actually, it's a wider range than Fox. Fox only goes up to 60. So basically, Trae Young is very similar to Fox, very similar to Fox. It's just that instead of 65 for Fox is like over here. 65 for Trae is over here. But that's really the main difference between those two players, right? If we take a look at Trae and Fox, like really the main difference is actually Trae Young has a 1-point lower floor and a 4-point higher, 4 or 5 point higher ceiling. Wider range of outcomes. Oh, that means that Trae Young is a better play. No. What's the difference between these two? 1.5 point difference in median? If De'Aaron Fox puts up 55 points and Trae Young puts up 30 points, oh my God, Trae Young's projection was off. No, 30 points, it's within one standard deviation. 57 points for Fox is within one standard deviation. Both fine. Well, neither of them hit that. Fox got 57, but he was projected for 45. Trae Young was projected for 47, and he only got 30. Yeah, and 47 is just his median. That's all that is. That's all this is his median, not a prediction of what's going to happen tonight. That's all that is. 47 up there. These are all the things that could possibly happen. Everything else in this distribution curve. 68.2% of the time will be in this green area. That's what a projection is really looking at. So I hope that explains. I mean, it explains what smash is and explains what a projection is. And it's not like I haven't explained this before. Anyone that watches the show regularly knows that I've done this exact explanation, like probably since the start of the year. I've probably done this 4 or 5 times already, which is fine. We get new people. People need to learn. People need to brush up. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying anything that's like oh my God, I finally let out the secret. Like, no, there's no secret. It's just math. It's just statistics. You go to Khan Academy and takes the statistics class. This is what you'll learn. Bankroll Sports Club says, yo, love this. Range, medians. It says mediums. This is what all DFS and handicapping sports is all about. Well done. Yes. You know me. I constantly say this is a math game, not a sports game. Just so happens to be with sports performance, but it's a math game. Michael Papadopoulos, would you optimize with a floor projection for single entry 100 entry GPPs. No, it's a GPP. Most of the time in GPP, you're going to be sacrificing projection for the sake of correlation and leverage. So the only use of the projection is to see how much you're sacrificing. So it doesn't, to me, it's all in relation to one another. You use the median, use the floor, use the ceiling, use the median. It doesn't matter. Just be consistent. You're looking relatively between two lineups, not absolutely. When you're building cash lineups, yeah, then you give me as much median as possible. There you go. But if you just play the top ceiling lineup, you're playing a cash lineup anyway, because the top ceilings are typically the top medians also. So it's like you're not getting any correlation or leverage. In NBA, you don't care that much about correlation, but you're not getting much leverage. You're still playing the highest owned players, pretty much. So in order to get leverage, you're going to have to sacrifice some of that projection. How much of a projection are you willing to sacrifice for an extra 30 percentage points lower in ownership? Maybe 2-3 points? So it doesn't matter what projection set you use. Doesn't matter. All you need to know is the relation between the top lineup, the optimal lineup, right? The optimal lineup on DraftKings right now is based on these projections. Don't go by them. 4:48 a.m. Top projection, top optimal is 281.76. Obviously, at some point, I'm going to get the ownership. And in order to win a GPP, even a small GPP, I'm probably going to have to get off, sacrifice a point or two to get a little bit lower owned lineup. So a point to two from 281. So probably a lineup that's like 279. So if I set this to ceiling and optimize, and this number was 437, I mean, it's still going to end up being a couple of points. So just in relation to the top lineup. That's all I need. So the number doesn't necessarily matter. If it's floor, ceiling, median, as long as it's consistent. Some players have higher standard deviation than others. Yes, that's true. But in the span of sacrificing projection for the sake of leverage, all you need to know is the projection relatively to other lineups. So if you decide to, if you do it all by floor, fine, then do it all by floor. Sacrifice one floor point for X ownership. When you do ceiling, obviously the numbers are bigger. So it's sacrifice 3 points for X, the same amount of ownership. In the middle, median, sacrifice 2 points for X amount of ownership. As long as you're consistent, you're weighing lineups relatively, not absolutely. So it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. I build using median. Who cares? It's right in the middle. But that's what this is. That's what DFS is. It's a math game, right? But this explains what a projection is. There's a normal distribution curve. Now, players don't technically have normal distribution curves. They have some weird that's probably can't even. They don't fit into this exact mold. Especially in like a sport like baseball, you're not gonna get normal distribution curves. But in order to simplify the process, and with the simulation methodology, you're going to do it this way. It's the easiest way of doing it without actually simulating the games, which is very hard to do. On FanDuel, I saw the winning lineup in a single entry sacrifice 17 points of projection the other night. Doesn't that seem pretty high? Maybe. Could be pretty high. I've seen winning lineups that sacrificed 80 points of projection. That won. Does that mean you do it? No, because you're rarely going to win. You have to stop thinking in terms of what won that night. Who cares? It does not matter. I saw a lineup with 14 guys that were bench unit players, and then they all won. It's like, okay, yeah, that'll happen once every 10,000 years. And it happened tonight. And that person had the guy. Okay, does that mean it makes it good? That's what you should be doing? No. Bad lineups win DFS contests every night. All the time. You have to stop thinking in terms of 100% and 0%. in poker, right? I have the best hand, and my opponent has 1 out. He has to draw 46 cards, and he only has 1 out. He needs to hit quads on the river to beat me, to beat my full house. The 4 of diamonds is the only card that could save him. And he has to call $100 bet into a $100 pot. He's getting 2-to-1 odds on something that will happen 46-to-1. He calls. His card comes out. Does that make him? No, it's horrible. Now, if he was getting more than 46-to-1 odds to do that, if I bet him penny and he called and he caught his quads, then yeah, that's the correct decision. But you shouldn't be calling a 2-to-1 bet on a 46-to-1 shot. And if he hits it, oh, that means you should always do it. No, of course not. Bad players need to win at these games in order for there to be an ecosystem. So there are plenty of bad lineups that win DFS contests. Not once in a while, like all the time. Someone's like, I'm going to jam in 8 1% owned guys into my lineup. And it just so happens that 3 or 4 of them put up 50-point games. Does that mean you should be doing it? No. The probability of that winning is low, very, very low. But if you have 100 people that are trying that type of strategy, and one of them will hit every once in a while, that doesn't make it high. That still is negative EV. You could build a lineup that is negative EV and win. Just it's a negative expected value. It means if you ran this 1,000 times, 10,000 times, at the end of it, you'll lose money. Doesn't mean you can't win every once in a while with it. Yeah, sure, of course. Chandler Cannon, would you be willing to give up more points in projection on a larger slate versus a smaller slate? It depends on the slate size. Doesn't matter. On a smaller slate, you have to deal more with duplication. So yes, I'm more likely to give up projection, and if I can't make lineups that aren't going to be duplicated. But the size of the slate doesn't matter that much. You're probably not giving up as many points in projection on a larger slate only because there are more options. Right? When you have a 3-game slate, instead of playing this guy, I'm playing that guy. I mean, how many options do you have? You're going to have to sacrifice 3 points in order to make any change. But if there are a lot of players on the slate and they're all somewhat efficiently priced, like the difference between 50 different players isn't all that many points. The difference between 20 people that are all 2% owned, the projections aren't going to be that different from each other. So you're most likely not going to be sacrificing a ton. You're not going to be sacrificing 25 points for no apparent reason. Right. Daniel Hutchins has it right. With the larger slate, you have more choices. So you shouldn't have to give up less projections in order to get leverage. That's right. Yeah, but we could have an 11-game slate with this guy out, that guy in, this, people are 6-handed rotations, and we have, mega chalk, stupid chalk, 6 guys that are going to be 60% plus owned. It's like, yeah, they're also going to be projected extremely high. I mean, they're going to be highly projected. And in order to get leverage, you're going to have to fade one of them or 2 of them, and you're going to have to sacrifice a bunch to do so. It depends on the slate like that. Outside of that, the differences between, like I said, Kawhi Leonard, Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, like if they're all sitting there at like 5% owned, like, does it matter which one do you play? You're not going to sacrifice more projections so you don't play any of those 3 because they're already low owned as it is, low enough owned. Why do you have to sacrifice any more? Druid 27, do you backload your GPPs for late news on DK? If you want to. Depends on what you're aiming for. There's no yes or no. There's no yes or no to that question. A lot of top players left spaces to see if Harden was going to play or not. Because if Harden didn't play, there's a lot of edge. Because if Harden was going to be chalk as it is, then switch and make all the pivots then. But then there are other people that played the early game. That Denver-Orlando game, Jokic was underowned, right? Guys in that game were kind of underowned. Fournier was 12% owned. So you do the other way. You go, I think people are going to wait on see if Harden's playing, and I'm going to get low owned on the first. I'm going to lock it up in the first game. You could do that as well. So it depends on what your approach is for the slate. But understand that last night, Brooklyn with Irving out, Brooklyn was going to be chalk as it is. Like Bruce Brown and Claxton and Joe Harris on FanDuel, and they're already going to be owned, right? So you were backloading as it was to some extent. Brandon Stinson, more or less, is there a cap on how much salary can be left in the table in large field GPPs? My lineup with 1,100 remaining did better than the one with 600 left. It happens semi-regularly to me. It doesn't matter. You're still asking the wrong questions. Is there a cap? Here's how you know. I'm gonna explain how you know you're asking a stupid question. Okay? This is the definitive. There's two ways to know that you're asking a stupid question in DFS. Number one, can it be answered by yes or no? If your answer can be answered, if I can answer, say yes, or I could say no, that means it's a stupid question. Number two, can it be answered with an exact number? Those are the two qualifying factors. So think of your question and say, can this question be answered with yes, no, or an exact number? And if it can be, delete the question. Is there a cap on how much salary can be left on the table in large field GPPs? It depends. That would be the correct answer. There's no yes or no. How much salary can we leave on the table? You're asking for an exact number. It depends. Depends on the slate. Depends on the projection of the players. This depends. Let's say there's a 3K guy that projects for 700 points. And then there's another $3,000 guy that projects for 8 million points. And then there's another 3K player. Most likely you're not spending your entire salary, right? You may only spend $47,000 on DraftKings because the guys that are cheaper are actually higher projected than the guys that are more expensive than them. So why are you going to spend all your salary? Oh, I'm going to fit in Harden, Luka, and Jokic. Why? The guys that are 8K project better than them. Imagine Harden, Luka, Jokic on this slate today. Let's just say Harden, Luka, Jokic, Giannis are all minimum price. Well, they're going to project better. Who are you going to play? Trae Young? Or are you going to play Harden at 3K? Well, you're going to play Harden at 3K. Are you going to play Kawhi at 9,000 or Luka at 3K? You play Luka at 3K. You may not be able to spend all your salary because the people that are even the lowest salary have have higher projection. People that are 3 times more expensive. So you may be leaving 3K on the table and you have a better lineup with the more projected points. Now I'm using an extreme example just to highlight the fact of why the question is stupid. Yeah, there are plenty of lineups that could be, especially late swap. You're late swapping, this guy's in, that guy's out, and you're left there, and the best lineup you can make is 58-7 on FanDuel or something, or 48-8 on DraftKings. And okay, and what's wrong with that? There you go. You're more likely to leave salary on the table on a short slate. Why is that? If you're playing a 3-game slate, 2-game slate, showdown slate, a lot of times there have been showdown slates in NFL where I've left 10,000 on the table, not spend it. where my average lineup left 5,000 on the table. Well, why do you do that? Can't you make better lineups? Yeah, of course I can make higher projected lineups, but they're going to be duplicated like 60 times. And I'm playing a GPP in Showdown. So my main goal is to not have duplicated lineups or have the least duplication. Because that's my priority. How do I get that? Well, if I spend all my salary, most likely I'm going to be duplicated a ton. Some of those lineups may not be, but a lot of the lineups will be. So I'm more likely to leave salary on the table. But let's say I was playing that same Showdown slate, but I was playing cash games. Well, I don't care about duplication of cash games. So I'm probably not leaving 5,000 on the table. Probably spending is whatever the highest projected median lineup is. If it so happens to leave 1,200 to the table, then so be it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you see, there are other variables. That's why you can't answer questions with yes, no, or a number. What contest are you in? What are you playing? What's the situation? What opponents? There's all these other variables. So until you know all the other variables, everything depends. What do you do with ace king in poker? Well, what does that mean? How am I supposed to answer that? How do you play ace king? I'm asking you, how do you play ace king offsuit in hold'em, in no limit hold'em? Well, how do you answer that? Well, number one, I'm gonna have to know: are you in a tournament? Is this a cash game? What's the stack sizes? What stacks are around the table? How many opponents are playing at the table? Are you playing four-handed? Are you playing nine-handed? What position are you in? Right? Are you under the gun? Are you on the button? Are you in the big blind? Was there a raise? Are there three limpers that have limped in? So how am I supposed to answer the question of like this is the same thing in DFS. You're asking, what do I do with ace king offsuit? There's tons of things there's situations where you fold it outright. You chuck it in. There's situations where you shove. There's situations where you flat call. There are situations where you min raise depending on the stacks. There's so many different other variables that you have to deal with. So asking a question like, well, what is this? It's like, well, there's like 8 other variables that they depend. That's why it depends. Okay, let's see if there's anything else before we get out of here. Right, Drew at 27 highlighted exactly the same thing. FanDuel's pricing is so loose that you're tricked into thinking you're making a really good lineup when it might not be optimal depending on the slate. That's absolutely correct. Oh, this looks like a great lineup, and you have no leverage. You have nothing. You're wondering is like, oh, great, I'm min cash type of lineup. Because the pricing is so soft, and a lot of times you have like 4 or 5 guys that project so well that it's like, do you play them or not? Like you have to make those type of decisions. But it makes it you feel good not having to play a Nicholas Claxton or something, even though you probably did on FanDuel yesterday. But like the 4K guys that you kind of almost need to play on DraftKings, you have to make those types of decisions. On FanDuel, you don't. So it feels like you're building a better lineup, but it's actually a suboptimal lineup if you're playing large field GPPs. So yeah, but those are the variables that matter. So that's why I understand when you're asking a question, like you need to take into account all of the, like in order for a proper question to be asked, you're going to have to write several paragraphs to explain the situation. Should I play so-and-so tonight? Even doesn't have an answer either. Do I play Harden tonight? Well, that depends. Depends on the rest of your lineup. It depends on the contest you're in. Depends on the stakes, the opponent level. Depends on a ton of things. Do I wait for the late games? Well, it depends on what the late games are. Depends on what the positions of those players are. Depends on what their projected ownership is going to be. It depends on what the projections are compared to there's so many other things to think about. So that's why you have to think non-linearly. Once you start thinking probabilistically and non-linearly, you don't ask these types of questions. You think of, well, there's no one thing to do. There's no one correct thing to do. There's no correct answer to anything. There's more probable and less probable. Like I'm more likely 80% of the time to do this and 20% of the time to do that. On this slate, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? But I'm more likely to do this than do that. Does it mean you never do this? No, of course not. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. Do you ever play a player in 100% of your lineups? Well, sometimes, sure. Sometimes not. Do you ever X out a guy? Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes, like, it depends. Depends on the slate, depends on your strategy, depends on the contest that you're specifically playing in, depends on so many other factors. So without giving any of the other factors, how am I supposed to answer the question? It's not that you're leaving stuff out. You're unaware. The reason why people ask those types of questions is because they're unaware that you should be factoring in 8 to 10 other things. And that's what I'm trying to teach you. To factor in all those things. To not think in terms of, well, you always do this and you never do that. Like that doesn't exist in DFS. Always fill out your lineups so that you don't blank spots. Yeah, okay. There's a yes or no. There's a yes. You always do that. Right? Don't reserve entries without putting in some type of line. Okay. Can't win with blank spaces. Okay, yes. I get that, right? Probably not playing injured players, right? If you know they're going to be injured, if they have the out symbol and they're not going to play, you're never going to play that. And even then, even in that example, that's not a never. That it's weird to say. There could be certain instances where you'd play an injured player. More than one instance that you'd actively play an injured player. Can you come up with the circumstances where you'd play an injured player? I can come up with 2. You'd play an injured player. Let's say you're playing a head-to-head, okay, with someone else. All their PMR is done. You're up by a half a point. But all their PMR is done. And you're up by a half a point, and you have 1 slot left. So you have 1 slot. And let's say you have James Harden there. Yeah, you're that far ahead. And you have the 10K guy. And you have James Harden. And you're up by a half a point. But your opponent is done. Is absolutely done. 0 PMR. Play the injured player. Harden can get a turnover and get injured, right? You get negative points. If you get a 0 in that spot, you win. So it doesn't matter how many points you score. So play the guy with a 0. Now, obviously, someone's going to say to me, well, what if there's a stat correction and it's a half a point and you go the other way? True. So maybe let's say you're up by 3 points, right? If you're up by a half a point, maybe you still keep the guy in because you never know. Stat correction and you lose. And you have the guy that's 0. Okay, maybe you get that. If you're up by 3 points, 4 points, probably not outside of the range of a stat correction, play the injured player. I don't know how a basketball player gets negative 3 points, but if you get a 0 there, you're guaranteed to win. So just play the injured. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Just play the guy that there's no risk whatsoever. So that's an instance you'd play an injured player. Another instance of you actively playing an injured player is if let's say we have like a showdown. It's showdown and it's the cheapest player in the pool. It's a $200 player, but they're injured. So they're not going to play. There's probably more for NFL. So it's a $200 player that's injured. The next highest player is like 400. But the only way you can make a certain lineup, let's say you're jamming in 5 studs. You're playing like Patrick Mahomes and the captain. You're stacking the Chiefs or something. And the only way to make that lineup is to play a $200 player in the utility spot. The guy's injured. He's not going to play. But there's no way to get those 5 other people with that guy in the captain spot without playing that $200 player. Can the other 5 guys score enough points that the 0 doesn't matter? Sometimes that works out. We see that in NFL Showdown where the cheap guy gets 3 points and he's in the optimal winning GPP lineup. So that 0, that could be fine. The guy's injured, not going to play, but that's the only way you could make that lineup. Now, is it something that you actively look? How do I do? No, but it's like I said before, nothing in DFS is 100% or 0%. So that's why I was trying to think of like, oh yeah, you'd never play injured guys. And then I'm like, no, even that's not a never. There are instances. They may happen 0.1% of the time, but there are instances where it could make you could make a plus EV lineup with an injured player. So once you start thinking like this, when this is thinking non-linearly, thinking probabilistically, you could start coming up with where are there instances, are there outcomes, where can I find where an outcome happens where it's logical, it's plus EV, and it goes against like, oh, you should never do like, no, there's going to be a percent of the time that something is going to be viable. So saying something is yes, no, always, never, those type of terms I don't like using. So I hope you got something out of today's show. Explain some stuff for an 11-game slate. So what are we going to talk about? Half the league's going to get traded. The injury report doesn't matter. Who cares about the injury report? That's the biggest lie. The biggest lie, the injury report, biggest work of fiction there is. Going to care about the injury report? Who knows? We'll see what happens. And I don't even know if I'm going to play tonight. I don't think I am. I'll keep up with what's going on so we can review it tomorrow. But it's going to be a shit show. I'm telling you. Or I say that and it's not. It's going to be one of those like, oh, I can't believe it's an 11-game slate and nothing's happened. Wouldn't that be a kick in the ass? Well, whatever. We'll come back tomorrow and talk about it, right? Because that's what I do. Every day, every weekday here on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Keep the apple juice cold. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got Grinders Live coming up tonight with the OGs. The OGs, Beer Makers Fan, Noto, Head Chopper. They're coming up at 5:30 Eastern time here on YouTube. And then crunch time for premium members with Roth, Meansy, and Tuttle maybe, someone else. That's for premium members where you could click on the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. As always, you could get you could pick up my course, my 15-hour audio DFS master course, Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports at theoryofdfs.com. But we'll do this again tomorrow, like we always do. Weekdays, 11 a.m. in the morning for the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders.com.